Hi, my name is Allison Uribe, and I'm going to be discussing what can means, specifically in the context of free will. So, to give a basic overview, the dictionary definition from Merriam-Webster for the word can is lengthy, to say the least. There's the verbs, the adverbs, the nouns, everything, but I doubt you're here to listen to me rant about the aluminum can or aluminum cylinders for you. So let's talk about the verb. Can means to be physically able to or mentally able to do something or think, to know how to indicate possibility, be inherently able or designed to, be permitted by conscience or feeling to, be made probably by circumstances to, or be logically or axiologically able to. So the can in free will is the verb of can. It has to deal with power, the power to do something, to be allowed to do what you want to do. There's a lot of desires that are baked into the definition of can in free will, whether or not we have the free will to act upon what we believe we can or cannot do, which also leads into constraints and coercion. So if we can do something, there is the belief that we are unconstrained by outside forces or by inner turmoil. We are not coerced into doing that one thing. We have formed that thought. We have formed the ability to do something, to act upon that free will without coercion, without constraint. Basically, you would if you could. If you would do something, you can do something. And now that leads into how can be applied to free will. So my definition is the ability of an individual to form thought and react to that thought through action or inaction depending on the individual's personal rationality. My definition is baked into individuality. While we have the collective consciousness of free will, determinism, indeterminism, we ultimately form the definition, form the ability to do something personally, individually. We have those thoughts, we have that desire, that necessity to act upon what we believe is right with our own rationality. And I believe that that is fundamentally baked into how we view can in the form of free will. So as I was saying, there are differing ideas of can. We have the incompatibilist view, and of course we have the compatibilist view. So incompatibilists, especially Kane, says it's talking about what persons can and cannot do, is talking about their powers. They have the power to do something or they have the power to not do something. But on the other side of incompatibilism, we have paraboom, which ought implies can. If we can do something, we ought to do something. If we ought, we can. There is that view of parabooms in which we do not have can as an incompatibilist statement. Incompatibilism does not work with can. We can do things, we cannot do something. It does not matter to paraboom in his view of incompatibilism and libertarianism. Now, on the other hand, we have compatibilists. So Fisher says, for instance, if they're able to choose, will decide, so forth, to do X, they would do X. So if we can decide to do something, we would do something. And Kane says that you would do it if you wanted or tried to. While Kane is not compatibilist, he still offers this viewpoint from the compatibilist side. So part of can includes conditional analysis. So Fisher states that can suggest that our freedom can be understood in terms of certain conditional statements. If then statements. If you can do something, then you do something. This leads very well with desires and abilities and necessities for that action to be done. If we have the desire, then we act upon that desire. This does lead to some problems with phobias, and Fisher points this out a little bit later, in which phobias that might include past traumas, subliminal advertising, averse conditioning, hypnosis, direct electrical stimulation of the brain, they all have a direct psychological impact upon that individual. Fisher states that, to make the point starkly, an individual could have his brain directly manipulated without his consent so as to choose Y. This would presumably render it true that he cannot do X, even though it might well be the case that if he had chosen to do X, he would have done X. So the if-then statements in relation to can in this instance do not pair nicely together. If I wanted to do something, I have the desires, I have the necessary viewpoint, the rationality to act upon that desire. Phobias are in their own nature irrational. For instance, I am extremely scared of spiders. So if I see something in the distance, I have that desire to do that one thing. If I have the desire to go ride my bike, but there is a spider on the handlebars, I am not going to do that. In all rationality, in all physical sense, I have formed that action, but I will not do it because of that phobia. That's where conditional analysis really struggles with the definition of can, especially with Fisher's view. This leads into the consequence argument on the other side. In other words, we cannot now do otherwise than we actually do. If we desire something, we can't do it unless we are actually doing it. We can't change the past, we can't change laws of nature. If I wanted to go control electricity, I can't. I can have the desire, I can have that thought process, I can have everything. But in all rationality, I cannot do that. Therefore, that free will is not present in that definition. So while Kane discusses how we cannot do certain things, and even if determinism is true, our present actions are results of the past and laws of nature, the definition of can that I have landed upon takes into consideration how we think as an individual. Upon an individual level, it does not matter whether or not the trees bend to the wind. It doesn't matter whether a rock is sturdy and can not break. It doesn't matter if you ate a sandwich that day instead of soup. What matters is the individual thought process and rationality behind something and deciding to choose that action, whether or not there is inaction or action. There is the ability to do something, therefore we can have can present in free will. With can comes naturally moral responsibility. If we can do something, should we do something? If we cannot, are we responsible? There's a lot of individual blame, praise heaped upon the word can. In such a small word, there holds so much possibility for something wrong to happen. If we can do something, we form that desire. If we start enacting that desire upon the world, are we held responsible even if we do not follow through? Even if, depending on the rationality present, what is happening in the world? What is really happening? So, Paraboom states that our capacity for self-governance of the sort required for free will is very context-specific, dependent on facts about ourselves and the context we are in, oftentimes in ways that are invisible to us. The psychological mechanisms that provide us with what we are entitled to call free will in one context are oftentimes of little use in other contexts. The individual rationality of someone forming thought, enacting those thoughts, having that desire, whether or not they act upon that, is very individualistic. There are the natures of the universe at play, but whether or not determinism is true or not does not lend into the definition of can, in which individuality is paramount to the definition. We have responsibility if we place upon ourselves. We have responsibility based on whether or not we have responsibility based on our own personal definitions of can and our own beliefs of the action or inaction that we have formed through our free will. So, in conclusion, the free will and can go hand in hand. If you can do something, a choice has been made. Something has gone on in the brain, whether or not it's been determined or not determined. There has been a process put in place in order for an individual to act upon that psychological matter. And we have to really just turn back to how people view the word can. Can itself is a big word hidden within 3 little letters. People can think about how can impacts their daily life upon how, if you can do something, will you do it? Will you not do it? Do you have the freedom of that thought paired with the action? There is always going to be something influencing other people, but the only constant is our own personal beliefs and our own personal thought processes. We may be influenced by others, but in the end, we form that view and merge it into can I, should I, could I. There are many possibilities, many choices available to an individual in which we need the rationality, the personal thought processes, and the personal action. And these 3 things combined together can really summarize the view of can. With our choices and our actions, we can incorporate free will into everything that we do. If we can do something, if we can think of something, if we are able and willing to form that thought, then can is always an aspect of our daily life. We can always jump upon an opportunity or decide not to. Decisions are made subconsciously or consciously. Even if we don't realize it, we are always at the whims of the word can on an individual level. Can is a very individualistic matter, and in order to maintain our own personal stability within the universe, our own thoughts and rationality play heavily within free will and our ability to function in day-to-day life. Thank you.